Ma'am, I need you to empty your pockets and step away from my desk now. Bank manager Gerald Whitman's voice cut through Midwest Trust Bank like a blade. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor, pointing an accusatory finger at the black woman seated across from him. Every customer in the lobby froze. The woman wore faded jeans and a plain hoodie, no makeup, no jewelry. Gerald's eyes swept over her dismissively before he grabbed hand sanitizer from his desk drawer. "People like you don't walk into banks like this asking for millions," he sneered, squirting sanitizer into his palms with theatrical disgust. "Security cameras are recording everything, so don't try anything stupid." He wiped his hands slowly, deliberately, never breaking eye contact with Dr. Amelia Richardson. Have you ever witnessed someone being publicly degraded only to discover they held terrifying power? The digital clock above the teller windows glowed at 2:47 p.m. Branch closing time, 73 minutes. Gerald Whitman had been having a perfect day until she walked in. 23 years managing this branch, and he'd developed a sixth sense about troublemakers. The way she'd approached his desk without an appointment, clutching a manila folder like it contained treasure instead of whatever food stamp paperwork was probably inside. "Let me guess," Gerald continued, his voice carrying to the dozen customers scattered throughout the lobby. "You're here about that business loan application you submitted online. $2.3 million? He chuckled, shaking his head. "Do you have any idea what kind of collateral that requires?" Dr. Amelia Richardson's phone buzzed against the desk. The caller ID flashed briefly. U.S. Treasury Debt Director Chen. She declined the call without glancing down, her attention focused entirely on Gerald's performance. "Sir, perhaps we could discuss this privately," she said quietly. "Oh, I think transparency is important in banking," Gerald replied, loud enough for the elderly white woman at the next desk to hear clearly. Mrs. Patterson, a longtime customer, looked visibly uncomfortable but remained silent. Near the corner ATM, 17-year-old Zoe Chen held her phone steady, live streaming to her 200 followers. The viewer count climbed steadily. 347, 521, 698. Comments flooded the screen faster than she could read them. "Is this really happening? Someone call the news. Get his name and badge number." Maria Gonzalez, a 24-year-old teller behind bulletproof glass, watched the scene unfold with growing horror. She'd worked here 18 months, sending money home to her family in El Salvador. Speaking up meant risking her job. Staying silent meant watching injustice happen 3 feet away. Gerald opened Amelia's loan application with exaggerated ceremony. "Says here you want to open a community development fund, invest in minority-owned businesses." He looked up with mock concern. "That's very ambitious, but banks deal in reality, not charity cases." Security guard David Torres shifted near the entrance. Something about the woman seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. The way she carried herself, calm, authoritative, like someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. Her posture never changed despite Gerald's escalating theatrics. "These people always aim too high," Gerald muttered to his assistant manager, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's like they watch too much TV and think success just happens." Amelia's black leather portfolio rested on her lap. Inside, barely visible through the partially open zipper, was what appeared to be an American Express Centurion card, the mythical black card that required spending $250,000 annually just to qualify. The live stream hit 1,200 viewers. Zoe adjusted her angle to capture Gerald's increasingly animated gestures. "Ma'am, I'm trying to save you embarrassment. Community development funds require extensive financial backing, proven track records, connections to established institutions." He gestured around the marble lobby. "This isn't the kind of place where people just walk in off the street with big dreams." Mrs. Patterson finally spoke up. "Excuse me, but is this really necessary? Can't you discuss her application privately?" Gerald turned toward the elderly woman with practiced patience. "Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate your concern, but we have protocols to protect our legitimate customers from potential fraud situations." The word fraud rippled through the lobby like electricity. Other customers began pulling out phones. The live stream viewer count jumped to 2,100. Amelia's phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID read FBI Special Agent Williams. Again, she declined without glancing down. "Sir," she said, her voice remaining steady, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my qualifications." "Oh, I understand perfectly. You filled out an online application, probably heard about some government program that makes banks loan money to people who can't pay it back, and figured you'd try your luck." He stood up, his 6'2" frame towering over her seated position. "The thing is, we actually verify information here. We check references. We look at real bank statements, not whatever printouts you brought in that folder." David Torres shifted near the entrance. His 15 years in security had taught him to recognize when situations were about to spiral out of control. The woman's composure was remarkable, almost supernatural. Most people would be shouting by now, or crying, or storming out. She sat like someone waiting for a delayed flight, mildly inconvenienced, but not particularly concerned. "I think," Gerald announced to the entire lobby, "we need to involve the authorities. We've had several incidents lately with people attempting to use false documents for large loan applications." The live stream exploded with comments. Viewer count, 3847. "Call the police on him. This is 2024, not 1924. Someone dox this racist." Zoe whispered into her phone. "Y'all, this is getting crazy. The manager is literally calling the cops on this woman for applying for a business loan." Maria Gonzalez watched Amelia's reaction through the bulletproof glass. Still no emotion, no anger, no fear, just patience, like someone who knew something nobody else did. Gerald reached for his desk phone. "I'm calling 911. We have protocols for suspicious activity." "Sir," Amelia said quietly, "are you certain that's your best option?" Something in her tone made Gerald pause, his hand hovering over the receiver. For a split second, doubt flickered across his face. Then his arrogance returned. "Ma'am, I've been doing this for 23 years. I know exactly what I'm dealing with." He lifted the phone and began dialing. The digital clock read 3:15 p.m. Branch closing, 45 minutes. Gerald's call to 911 had been brief and theatrical. "Midwest Trust Bank, 455 Commerce Street. We have a suspicious individual attempting financial fraud. Black female, approximately 40, refuses to leave premises after loan denial." Dr. Amelia Richardson listened to every word without flinching. Her dark eyes tracked Gerald's movements as he hung up, clearly pleased with his performance. "Officers will be here in 10 minutes, he announced to the lobby. "Ma'am, I strongly suggest you gather your things and leave voluntarily before this becomes a criminal matter." The live stream had exploded. Zoe Chen's viewer count hit 8,200 with comments scrolling so fast they blurred together. She'd started a second hashtag, hashtag Midwest Trust Racism. Local Twitter accounts were already sharing clips. "This manager is insane. Someone called Channel 7 News. Where is this bank? We need to boycott." 3 blocks away, Channel 7 reporter Jessica Park received the tip from her news director. "Possible discrimination incident at Midwest Trust. Viral video building. Get there now." Back in the bank, Maria Gonzalez had made a decision. She approached her supervisor, assistant manager Kevin Walsh, who'd been watching the scene from behind the teller counter. "Kevin, this isn't right," she whispered. "The woman hasn't done anything wrong. She just applied for a loan." Kevin, a nervous 28-year-old who'd been promoted beyond his competence, shook his head rapidly. "Maria, Gerald knows what he's doing. We don't interfere with management decisions." "But what if a corporation finds out? What if this goes viral?" "It won't," Kevin said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Gerald's been here longer than both of us combined." Mrs. Patterson had heard enough. At 73, she'd banked with Midwest Trust for 41 years, keeping substantial retirement accounts that made her opinions valuable to management. She stood up from her desk, her designer handbag clutched firmly. "Excuse me, young man," she called to Gerald. "I'm Mrs. Elizabeth Patterson, account number 447199923. I've been a customer here since 1983. Gerald's demeanor shifted instantly. Mrs. Patterson represented the kind of client that made his performance reviews shine. Wealthy, established, connected to the community's power structure. "Mrs. Patterson, of course. How can I help you? You can explain why you're treating this woman like a criminal for applying for a business loan." The challenge hung in the air. Gerald felt the weight of multiple phone cameras pointed at him, the live stream audience now approaching 12,000 viewers in Mrs. Patterson's steely gaze. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we have security protocols." "Security protocols for what? She's sitting quietly at your desk with paperwork." Dr. Amelia Richardson spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate your support, but I can handle this situation." Something in her tone made David Torres step closer. 28 years of security work, military, corporate, federal contracts, had trained him to recognize authority. The way she said, "I can handle this," wasn't defensive or hopeful. It was matter of fact, like someone stating they could handle their own luggage. Gerald sensed the mood shifting. The live stream, Mrs. Patterson's intervention, and the growing crowd of onlookers were creating pressure he hadn't anticipated. Time to regain control. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced loudly, "I understand this looks uncomfortable, but we have a responsibility to protect legitimate customers from potential fraud schemes. This individual submitted a loan application for $2.3 million with insufficient documentation." Amelia opened her black leather portfolio. "Mr. Whitman, you haven't actually reviewed my documentation. I've seen enough to know. You glanced at the first page of my application and made assumptions based on my appearance." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Gerald's face flushed red. Around the lobby, customers leaned forward. Zoe adjusted her phone angle to capture his reaction. "Ma'am, that is completely false. I review every application with the same professional standards. Then review mine." The simplicity of her challenge created an impossible situation. If Gerald refused, he'd look prejudiced in front of cameras. If he accepted, he'd have to admit he'd been performing for the audience rather than doing his job. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth, "but when the police arrive and find discrepancies in your documents, don't blame me for following protocol." Amelia placed a thick folder on his desk. "Please take your time." Gerald opened the folder with elaborate skepticism, expecting to find amateur business plans and inflated financial projections. Instead, he discovered documentation that made his breath catch. Federal employment verification from the U.S. Treasury Department, investment portfolio statements showing liquid assets exceeding $4.2 million, business credit reports with AAA ratings from all three agencies, letters of recommendation from 2 Federal Reserve Bank presidents and a U.S. senator. His hands trembled slightly as he turned pages. This wasn't possible. People with this level of financial credentials didn't walk into suburban bank branches wearing hoodies and jeans. They had private bankers. They conducted business in mahogany-paneled offices downtown. "There must be some mistake," he muttered. "What kind of mistake?" Amelia asked quietly. Gerald's mind raced. The documentation looked legitimate, but his 23 years of experience told him this was wrong. High net worth individuals had a certain look, a certain presentation. They drove luxury cars and wore expensive clothes. They didn't sit patiently while being insulted. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Regional Manager Sandra Blake. "Gerald, what the hell is happening at your branch?" Sandra's voice was sharp with panic. "My phone is exploding with calls about some racist incident. There's a live stream with 15,000 viewers showing you calling the police on a customer." Gerald stepped away from his desk, lowering his voice. "Sandra, I have the situation under control. Potential fraud case. I called authorities as a precaution." "Gerald! Corporate is receiving dozens of calls. The hashtag #MidwestTrustRacism is trending locally. Fix this immediately."
"I'll handle it," Gerald said, but Sandra had already hung up. He returned to find Amelia reviewing her own documents as if double-checking their accuracy. Her phone buzzed again, this time showing FBI Special Agent Williams for the third time. Again, she declined the call. "Ma'am," Gerald said, his voice less confident than before, "these documents will need to be verified through proper channels." "Of course," she agreed. "Shall I call Treasury Secretary Chen directly, or would you prefer to go through normal verification procedures?" Gerald's mouth drew dry. Treasury Secretary Chen wasn't someone branch managers casually contacted for document verification. The casual way she mentioned his name suggested familiarity that should be impossible. That won't be necessary. Let me just..." The bank's front door chimed. 2 police officers entered, their presence immediately commanding the lobby's attention. Officer Martinez, a 10-year veteran, and Officer Johnson, newer to the force, approached Gerald's desk. "We received a call about a possible fraud situation?" Officer Martinez asked. Gerald suddenly realized he was about to accuse someone with apparently legitimate federal connections of fraud in front of 15,000 live stream viewers, multiple phone cameras, and 2 police officers. For the first time since this began, Dr. Amelia Richardson smiled. The digital clock read 3:28 p.m. 2 police officers stood in the marble lobby while 16,400 people watched via live stream. Officer Martinez, a veteran with kind eyes, approached Gerald's desk with practiced caution. "Sir, you reported a fraud situation?" Gerald's confidence wavered as he gestured toward Dr. Amelia Richardson. This individual submitted a loan application with questionable documentation. When I tried to discuss proper procedures, she became uncooperative. "Uncooperative? How?" Officer Johnson asked, noting the woman's calm posture and the stack of official-looking papers on the desk. She insisted on having her application reviewed despite obvious discrepancies. Officer Martinez raised an eyebrow. "She wanted her loan application reviewed. That's why you called the police." The live stream comments exploded with sarcasm and outrage. Zoe Chen had to restart her stream twice as viewer numbers crashed the platform. "He called the cops because she wanted her loan reviewed. This man needs to be fired immediately. Someone get this manager's name." Dr. Richardson stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. "Officers, I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding." She reached into her black leather portfolio and withdrew a leather credential wallet. When she opened it, Officer Martinez's expression changed instantly. "Federal credentials," she said simply. "Dr. Amelia Richardson, Senior Compliance Officer, Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, badge number FR 2847. The silence in the bank was absolute. Gerald's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Mrs. Patterson gasped audibly. David Torres unconsciously straightened to attention. His military training recognized federal authority. Officer Martinez examined the credentials carefully. Real federal badges had specific security features: holographic seals, unique serial numbers, special paper that felt different from counterfeits. These were genuine. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez said, his tone shifting to respectful formality.
"Or any confusion. May I ask why you're here?" "I'm conducting an unannounced compliance investigation into discrimination complaints filed against this branch." Her voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. "Mr. Whitman has been under federal observation for approximately 41 minutes. Gerald's legs nearly gave out. Federal observation? 17 discrimination complaints have been filed against this branch in the past 8 months. The Federal Reserve takes such allegations seriously, particularly when they suggest systematic violations of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. She turned toward Gerald with professional calm. "Every interaction we've had has been recorded for federal investigation purposes." Gerald's face drained of color. "Recorded." Dr. Richardson opened her portfolio further, revealing a small digital recording device with a red light glowing steadily. Federal compliance officers are authorized to gather evidence during discrimination investigations. This device has captured 43 minutes of our conversation.
She pulled out a second device, a sophisticated digital camera with a telephoto lens. Visual documentation has also been standard procedure. Every gesture, every facial expression, every witness reaction. Officer Johnson whistled softly. "Sir, you called the FBI on a Federal Reserve investigator?" I didn't know. She didn't identify herself. "Mr. Whitman," Dr. Richardson interrupted gently, "federal investigators aren't required to announce their presence during compliance audits. That would defeat the purpose of investigating authentic behavior." Maria Gonzalez watched through bulletproof glass, her heart pounding. She'd witnessed discrimination before, but never seen it documented by federal authorities in real time. Mrs. Patterson spoke into stunned silence. "Young lady, are you saying this bank has been discriminating against customers?" "The investigation is ongoing," Dr. Richardson replied diplomatically. "However, preliminary data suggest concerning patterns. This branch shows a 67% loan denial rate for black applicants compared to 12% for white applicants with similar qualifications." She opened another section of her portfolio, revealing detailed statistical reports. Over the past 18 months, this branch has denied 847 loan applications from minority applicants while approving 923 applications from white applicants with identical or lower credit scores. The live stream viewer count hit 22,000. Comments flooded faster than human eyes could track. "She's Federal Reserve. This manager is so fired. Government sting operation live." Kevin Walsh, the assistant manager, had been watching from behind the teller counter with growing horror. He approached Dr. Richardson tentatively. "Ma'am, I'm Kevin Walsh, assistant manager. I want to state for the record that I disagreed with Mr. Whitman's approach. I thought he was being unprofessional." Dr. Richardson's eyes met steadily. "Mr. Walsh, our investigation covers all management personnel. Your actions during the past 43 minutes have been documented. Did you intervene when you noticed discriminatory behavior?" Kevin's face paled. Gerald is my supervisor." "I see. So you witnessed potential civil rights violations but chose not to act due to workplace hierarchy." The question hung in the air like a blade. Kevin realized he might be as complicit as Gerald. Gerald's phone rang. The caller ID showed his worst nightmare, Bank President Robert Chen. "Take it," Dr. Richardson suggested. "He's probably watching the live stream." Gerald's hands shook as he answered. "Mr. Chen, I can explain." "Gerald, what have you done?" President Chen's voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" "Sir, she didn't identify herself as..." "Dr. Richardson could have shut down this entire branch with a single phone call. She has direct authority from the Federal Reserve Board. You just performed exactly the kind of discrimination she was sent to investigate." The phone went silent for several seconds. "Are we looking at federal penalties?" The Equal Credit Opportunity Act carries fines ranging from $50,000 to $300,000 per documented violation. Today's interaction alone constitutes multiple violations. The broader investigation suggests systematic issues that could result in criminal referrals. Dr. Richardson pulled out her phone and showed the screen to Officer Martinez. "I should also mention that I've been in contact with the FBI Financial Crimes Division throughout this investigation." Officer Martinez stepped forward. "Dr. Richardson, do you require any assistance with your federal investigation?" "Thank you, Officer Martinez. Actually, yes." She turned toward Gerald with devastating calm. "Mr. Whitman called the FBI claiming I was committing fraud. Perhaps you could contact Agent Williams and let him know the situation has been resolved." "Agent Williams?" Officer Johnson asked. "Special Agent Marcus Williams, Financial Crimes Division. He's been expecting my call." She showed them her phone, revealing missed calls from FBI Special Agent Williams over the past hour. Officer Martinez understood immediately. "You've been in contact with federal investigators this entire time?" "Agent Williams has been tracking this compliance investigation. When Mr. Whitman called 911, federal protocols required Agent Williams to respond. He's currently 3 minutes away." Gerald sank into his chair as the full scope of his mistake became clear. He'd called the FBI to arrest a federal investigator who was already working with the FBI on a discrimination case against his bank. David Torres approached Dr. Richardson's desk. "Ma'am, I need to apologize. I recognize something familiar about you but couldn't place it. I should have realized you were law enforcement." "Mr. Torres, your military background is noted in our file. Former Army MP, correct?" Yes, ma'am. 12 years. Your restraint during the situation has been professional. Unlike some others present, you didn't participate in discriminatory behavior. The distinction wasn't lost on Gerald or Kevin. Dr. Richardson addressed the entire lobby. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to clarify the scope of what you've witnessed here. This wasn't simply rude customer service. Under federal banking law, what occurred here constitutes multiple violations of civil rights legislation. She enumerated on her fingers: discriminatory lending practices, violation of Equal Credit Opportunity Act, potential criminal civil rights violations under Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act, filing false police reports about federal investigators. The front door chimed again. A tall black man in a dark suit moved with confident stride of federal law enforcement. His eyes swept the lobby, taking in the phone's recording, the police officers, and the crowd of customers. Special Agent Marcus Williams approached Dr. Richardson's position. When he reached her, he straightened and gave a crisp salute. Dr. Richardson, ma'am, Agent Williams, Financial Crimes Division. I apologize for the delayed response. 22,000 live stream viewers watched a bank manager's career implode in real time because he couldn't see beyond the color of a customer's skin. Agent Williams turned toward the police officers. Officers, thank you for responding. This is a federal compliance investigation. Dr. Richardson has full authority here. He faced Gerald directly. Sir, are you the manager who called the FBI claiming Dr. Richardson was committing fraud? Gerald couldn't form words, because filing false reports about federal investigators constitutes obstruction of justice under Title 18, Section 1505 of the U.S. Criminal Code. That's a federal felony, carrying up to 5 years imprisonment. The livestream chat exploded with fire emojis and shocked face reactions. Zoe Chen whispered into her phone, "Y'all, this manager might actually get arrested by the FBI." Dr. Richardson raised her hand diplomatically. Agent Williams, Mr. Whitman was unaware of my federal status. However, his behavior during this investigation has been thoroughly documented. She addressed Gerald directly for the first time since revealing her identity. Mr. Whitman, you made several statements about people like me and my type of financial situation. You suggested I would be more comfortable at a check cashing store. You called the police when I requested a loan application review. This behavior occurred while I presented legitimate federal employment credentials and documentation showing liquid assets exceeding $4 million. Gerald's mouth moved soundlessly. Your actions today have been witnessed by thousands of people and documented with federal-grade recording equipment. This evidence will be submitted to the Federal Reserve Board, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Mrs. Patterson spoke into stunned silence. Dr. Richardson, what happens to customers who were discriminated against previously? Excellent question. The Federal Reserve will require this bank to review every loan denial for the past 24 months. Customers who were improperly denied will receive priority reconsideration and potential compensation for damages. Agent Williams consulted his phone. Dr. Richardson, I should mention that this live stream has been shared by Congressman Davis and Senator Washington. They're requesting immediate congressional briefings on banking discrimination. The scope of Gerald's disaster expanded beyond his comprehension. Congressional attention meant national media coverage, federal hearings, and regulatory scrutiny that could affect the bank's federal charter. President Chen's voice crackled through Gerald's phone, which was still lying on the desk. Dr. Richardson, I'm en route via helicopter ETA 7 minutes. Please don't make any final determinations until I arrive. She picked up the phone. President Chen, emergency interventions won't change the documented evidence. However, I'm willing to discuss compliance remediation options. Thank you. Gerald, you're suspended immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Gerald finally found his voice. Sir, I was protecting the bank's interests. You just cost this bank millions in regulatory fines and created a national scandal. You're terminated with cause, effective immediately. Kevin, you're suspended pending investigation. Maria Gonzalez is promoted to interim branch manager. The line went dead. 22,000 people had watched a bank manager's career implode in real time because he couldn't see beyond the color of a customer's skin. The helicopter's rotors thundered overhead at 3:52 p.m. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, customers watched a sleek corporate aircraft descend onto the bank's parking lot, scattering autumn leaves and drawing stares from gathering news crews. Bank President Robert Chen emerged in a $3,000 suit flanked by two corporate attorneys and Chief Legal Counsel Sarah Kim. His normally composed demeanor showed cracks of panic as he strode toward the entrance, phone pressed to his ear. "Stock prices down 11% in the last hour," he was saying. "How many news outlets have picked this up?" The live stream had reached 34,000 viewers. Hashtag Midwest Trust Racism was trending nationally. Local news trucks lined Commerce Street like a parade of accountability. Dr. Amelia Richardson remained seated at Gerald's former desk reviewing her documentation with Agent Williams. Her federal recording device continued capturing every sound, every conversation, every corporate damage control attempt about to unfold. President Chen burst through the bank's front doors with the urgency of a man watching his empire crumble in real time. His eyes immediately found Dr. Richardson, and his stride faltered. She looked exactly like what she was, a senior federal official who just documented systematic discrimination at his flagship branch. "Dr. Richardson," he said, approaching with the careful respect reserved for people who could destroy careers with a phone call. "I'm Robert Chen, bank president. I cannot express how deeply sorry I am about this incident." She stood with professional courtesy. "President Chen, I believe we need to discuss your institution's compliance with federal banking regulations." "Absolutely. Should we move to a private conference room?" "No, this investigation began in public view. Resolution discussions will continue the same way." Chen's corporate attorneys exchanged worried glances. Public negotiations meant no ability to control messaging or limit legal exposure. Agent Williams stepped forward. "President Chen, I'm Special Agent Williams, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We need to discuss potential criminal violations stemming from today's events." "Criminal violations?" Dr. Richardson opened her portfolio and withdrew a thick federal compliance manual. "Mr. Chen, your employee, Gerald Whitman, violated multiple sections of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act while under federal observation. Let me be specific." She turned to a marked page. Section 1002.4 prohibits discriminatory treatment based on race. Mr. Whitman explicitly stated that people like me should use check-cashing stores instead of banks. Chen winced visibly. Section 1002.9 requires equal treatment in loan application processing. Mr. Whitman refused to review my complete application based on my appearance. The livestream audience watched a federal compliance officer systematically dismantle a bank president's day. Section 102.14 prohibits discouraging applications. Mr. Whitman actively discouraged my loan application and suggested I was attempting fraud. Chen's lead attorney, David Park, stepped forward. "Dr. Richardson, perhaps we could discuss settlement parameters." "Mr. Park, this isn't a civil matter requiring settlement. These are federal regulatory violations requiring remediation and potential criminal referrals." She pulled out a second document. "Your bank's lending data shows systematic discrimination patterns. Over 18 months, this branch denied loans to 67% of black applicants versus 12% of white applicants with identical credit profiles." "Those numbers," Chen started, "are from your own